We split this in two because we didn't know whether it was going to be a highly technical crew or not. But looking around, I don't even need to be standing here. To introduce myself, I'm Jeff Pearring. I do the sales side for Store Server. I deal with all of our customers, our resellers, and anything like that's customer facing goes through me. Second half of the presentation is going to be Steve Jensen. He's our head of software development. So anyone in here that has a real question, that's the guy who's going to answer that question. I do want to just start by introducing Store Server. For those of you that don't recognize that picture, that is the beautiful backdrop of Colorado Springs, one of the main sites for digital equipment back in the day. Store Server was originally founded by a bunch of ex-DEC employees. And the very first thing that they did was they worked on the storage library system, TapeSys. So anybody who goes back that far is well aware.
I worked with you at Civic Care, Laura Buckley.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Laura Buckley was one of the original six. Yeah.
That's the last thing. That the garden of the gods.
It is very good.
See,
Yeah.
super beautiful. Oh, yeah.
That's where I bicycle.
Yeah.
Oh,
Exactly.
Whenever possible. Yeah.
And so I use this picture because I used to live there, so I'm very nostalgic for this area. And Steve gets to ride his bike through there. It's also analogous to our roles at Store Server. I like this big picture. Steve actually knows all the trails in between,
like how major hills and mountains. E-bike.
Oh no, I ride a manual bike, and if you're in Colorado, you cycle with wind and hills, and sometimes in the offending directions.
The other important part of this slide is that we are an IBM Gold Business Partner. We started out as an IBM OEM. They were the first people that came to us and said, hey, would you guys develop an agent for OpenVMS? So that's simply how we tied into to IBM with the, at that point in time, I believe it was still AdStar Distributed Management System, or had it moved to TSM?
No, it was still AdStar.
Still AdStar, and then it became Tivoli Storage Manager, then it became Spectrum Protect, and today it's known as Storage Protect.
Still the same thing.
It's still mostly the same thing.
ADSM.
ADSM,
Yeah.
And actually there was an earlier one. It was called Workstation Data Save and Restore before it actually became a product with for what it's.
So Store Server, we became data protection experts. Backup, disaster recovery is all we've ever done, and we do it really well. We span a lot of things. Again, the ABC Archive Backup Client, which you guys at Centene are using, was our first product that joined IBM Storage Protect. It works on x86. These are all the OpenVMS versions it works on. x86 version 9.2 and above, i64 version 8.2 and above, alphas version 6.2 and above. And yeah, if you have a VAX out there, if you run across a VAX customer who wants to back it up, we can go all the way back to VAX and work on 5.5 or higher. So this is one of those great things that because Spectrum Protect has basically been the same program for 30 years, we actually have a lot of backward compatibility here. So if you do run across customers or find people who have alphas and VAXs and they're looking for that multi-step migration, they'd like to get a backup before they start it, one option is to use Store Server for that process. Well, next to that, I put our latest release, which is coming up, and this is still currently in beta release, but we do have it installed at our customer sites. It is a Rubrik client, so instead of just being focused on IBM and the Tivoli Storage Manager Storage Protect, we decided to branch out and start using other backup products as well. So Rubrik is the first one that we're undertaking. So if you run into anyone that is anti-IBM, which is not too far of a cry these days, if they have Rubrik, we're already there. And if they have a different operating system, we're definitely taking votes on who should be next. We've gotten quite a lot of votes for the Cohesity Net Backup environment as to the next direction to go. We've got a couple of requests for Veeam, but not nearly as many. Those are kind of the two that are leading at the moment. We do have SDP. This is another OpenVMS-based product. This is for Oracle RDB, and it works again. We're going all the way back to alpha version 7.2, and everything forward. All these are also have been ported to x86 as well, and Steve will talk a little bit about that. So there's anyone that's running anything on any x86 today can use any of our products. Then this led to our data protection appliances. This was for the open systems. We would use the VMS to get in the door and then try and take over the whole environment from a backup standpoint, which worked fairly well when IBM Storage Protect was one of the top right quadrants in Gartner. Over the last 3 years, it has taken a pretty deep nosedive down at the bottom right. So that's a little bit less easy to sell customers on. Our typical customer size there is in around 100 terabytes and 100 terabyte plus range. Basically, we take the customers that are still big enough to have AIX systems and other distributed systems that really aren't addressed with a lot of the modern tools in backup, but yet they are not big enough to be considered important by IBM, and so they can't really put it together and install it easily and quickly. So we've turned it into an appliance. We can install that in one day. At the end of the day, you get to perform your first backups. Super simple. We've been doing that for almost 30 years now as well. And our latest release in the appliance space is actually a clean room appliance. This works on the nice new buzzword data assurance, which is the cyber resiliency, cyber assurance piece. This does a continuous scan of your data backup. It creates an isolated clean room. So it loads all of your, it stages the backups in the isolated clean room, scans them using Trend Micro, and then it spins them down. Excellent reporting on that as well. We'll go into a little more detail on that. I know that's not quite as appealing for OpenVMS users as it is for everyone else, but it is nice to know that now that you guys are moved into the x86 environment, our whole pitch here is that you can now bring yourselves into the backup space with the rest of the distributed system. So you don't have to have your own backup, your own admin. A lot of times things are headcount now, and backup is one of the areas where there's almost no headcount in most shops. So this way you can incorporate yourselves into any IBM or Rubrik backups that are there, and we have the cyber assurance and cyber resiliency tools to match that as well. So ABC, this is our flagship product for OpenVMS. It's been around for a while. It basically does everything that you would want to do in an OpenVMS environment. Uses the DCL interface, which is really nice and easy for everybody. It's so familiar that VMS admins, we usually send them a demo version for 30 days, and by the end of the week, they're asking me for quotes. Because it just connects to their system, and it's super easy for them to figure out how to use it. They don't have to learn anything new. Backup and restore disks with the alias files and the directories. This is all simple commands as well. This does not involve multiple steps. There's not a lot of scripting involved in this. It's very light work. In fact, backup admins that don't have OpenVMS experience typically can use this product as well, and are happy to now be able to control and bring the OpenVMS backups into their centralized umbrella of data protection. Supports both ODS2 and ODS5 file systems. We have full user authentication as well as encryption and TLS protocols. And then one thing that I also thought was pretty interesting here is that the stored data can be accessed from alternate client nodes as well. So this is something that is most everyone runs clusters in OpenVMS. Most everyone has all of the different silos and everything set up. So you want to make sure that you can actually perform restores and backups from different client nodes as well. So it's nice to be able to have that option rather than having it centralized per client. As I mentioned, it's all DCL interface. So here's some of the commands. Really simple commands.
You know, if I can for just a second, yeah. the one thing that might be different, especially for the VMS people, essentially, if you've used VMS backup, you know how this works. But what you don't know is how archive and retrieval, because those are different concepts within TSM. You can think of archive as a named snapshot in time of your data. and then we'll retrieve that named snapshot. So it gives you that extra little, it's a different take on it. And so what we'll do a lot of times is we'll have customers who have been doing GFS, grandfather, father, son style backups. You know, I do a full, then I do a bunch of incrementals, and I have to do another full and do a bunch of incrementals. We will have customers that we can convert to an incremental only, which is that's kind of natively how things want to run. And that's like having a snapshot in time at every of the whole thing. It's not just the pieces, it's the whole thing. But we also have had customers say, oh, no. I've been doing, grandfather, father, son for 30 years, and I have to have that. And the archive and retrieve fits into that model pretty well. You can also, Jeff mentioned that you can have different clients accessing data. The other sort of the corollary to that is you can name a client in TSM as just a name. It can be a machine, it can be a cluster, it can be the same machine. You can have machine A, I don't know, monthly, machine A, weekly, that kind of thing. And you can use that to also accomplish the different sort of backup and recover styles. You know, we don't really want to dictate a style to anyone. If we can convert them to what we think is more efficient, we will. But if we can't, we're more than happy to try to help them.
Use that feature. For your production backups, but you never restore that.
Store back to to develop.
So
Okay.
that's where the archives, don't they go to tape somewhere?
They don't have to. They can go like many things in TSM. The back end is that's wide open. You can actually save to multiple targets at the same time, right? You can split.
It depends on what the storage.
It depends. All of this depends on storage capacity, but yes. So you can write tape and disk. You can write 2 disks, roll off to tape. You can write directly to tape if you want. I happen to be a big fan of tape, and there's 2 reasons for that. Air gap is king. In my view, air gap is king. So that's secure. And then the other reason is we have had customers who've been targeted by ransomware and have had down systems. And, that's talk about people who are afraid of their jobs and everything else, right? That's a serious thing when that happens. And the tape backup, which was gapped, just restored, and we're back.
Quite difficult to miss with a tape. It's not in the right.
It's really hard to do if it's sitting in a vault or even just over on a table somewhere. It just has to be gapped.
And the nice thing is that now this stuff can also go to cloud.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can send them to cloud as well, because it's the same
Right.
backend interface. So it makes it very easy to tie it to any cloud backups and restores that you have.
Right. Yeah.
Sorry, Jeff, I didn't mean to
No.
derail you.
The other aspect of that is that with the archive and retrieve, a lot of people use it for end of year tax, or we've had people who have specific regulatory requirements where they need to have an immutable snapshot of specific date and time stamps, that kind of things for a backup set. And you can do that, and you can run those. And again, this is all automated, so you're not executing commands every time it runs or anything like that. It's simply set up on a scheduler, and so this scheduler runs, your backup's complete. These are the different operating systems within there. This is the setup environment. So again, I just wanted to reemphasize that it's really anywhere you are on the OpenVMS lifecycle, we have a way to help protect that data. Again, and we can move you along that data, that trajectory pretty easily by using the backups and perform restores, because again, the restore mechanism is through this software that is essentially the same for over 25, 30 years. Here's a quick slide on the Oracle RDB. Jensen, are you guys using Oracle RDB anymore? No.
We are using.
Oh, you are.
We don't back up using your product.
Yeah.
Backup. RBF to a drive.
Yeah, regular database dump. Yeah.
So here are some of the advantages. You can do the hot backup. It is application aware, which can be nice if you have any databases that can't be shut down. You're getting fuzzy or corrupted backups sometimes. High availability, as well as being able to do the full database restore both online and offline, which is a big thing for a lot of our database customers. So for our appliance size, we do customize these appliances. Everything that we build is built for the customers. It's not an off-the-shelf type of situation. A lot of times when shocking backup today, it's an appliance node and you stack the nodes and you just turn the compute off if you want more storage. We actually are daisy chaining disk enclosures here, which makes us highly scalable. And the compute is a single node inside of itself, so you don't have to do that. It also makes upgrades very easy, so that when you're upgrading, you can just pull the server piece out, reconnect the storage to the back end, so you don't have to have mass migrations of hundreds of terabytes of data. It's very easy these days with the ability to tie storage into the server. We also determine the disaster recovery options. As Steve mentioned, since we've worked with Storage Protect for so long, they basically have open-ended on the back, so you can do that to disk, tape, secondary appliance, to cloud, whatever it is that you want. We have customers using all of those different methods today. In fact, we have some customers using multiple DR methods where they have a secondary site, but their secondary site is either, we do a lot of state and local governments, so it's either in the same building or across the street kind of a situation. So they'll do a third copy to the cloud to get some geographic separation. That's a pretty popular one. And then we also have some customers who want the air gap capability of tape, but they don't want to have the restore problems that tape can provide with lengthy restore times. So they'll set up two physical appliances that are replicating to each other, and then they'll just offload a copy to a tape library. Because again, for $40,000, you can get 2 petabytes of storage on tape. So they just use that as a huge data lake and kind of throw long-term archive storage in there. And then they know that it's offline and it's safe. So if they do have a disaster, their first recovery is the backup. Second recovery is still on disk in the disaster recovery area. And then if there's anything that they need to roll back to or find that was lost or locked down, they have the tape that's air gapped. This is a nice picture of the way that all that goes. Again, we do have all of the production environment is capable to be protected with store server. So it's one of those things where it doesn't matter what you guys have in your production environment. We've found a way to connect everything in there and back it all up and replicate it. So the question that we do always get these days is, why are we still doing Storage Protect? And the reality is that it's a bulletproof product at this point in time. Very often today, products are created. Veeam is the good example, where they were created and they weren't going to do anything to go back to tape, and then all of a sudden they realized they had customers that wanted to go to tape, and they had to take a 2-year hiatus and rewrite the whole thing. Came back out, they lost a lot of ground to Cohesity and Rubrik. The other reason is it's very, very broad in its support. Because it was developed by IBM and they have such a wide range of customers. There's over 1,700 different devices that you can connect. So like I said, if there's anything that you need to connect that doesn't fit into your other environments, something like OpenVMS, it's something that we can connect to. And then it's very granular, and it's something that's very progressive incremental. So there's no full backups beyond the initial, which is still an incremental. It's just everything is new. And then that helps with the hardware investment as well. We do offer a mutable disk as an option for those people who just refuse to get tape or think the tape is too slow. We do have immutable disk options, and that does include snapshotting on disk as well. So now you can have your backups taken to a hardware snapshot, and that makes massive restores very, very simple, because you just have to load that snapshot back in. This is all very hardware based, but is very mature technology in the hardware space. And again, because we're just throwing data into a bucket, Spectrum Protect doesn't care what that bucket is, so immutable storage is acceptable for that. We have it designed as well for the FIPS 140-2 at-rest encryption. We have a specific server model that comes with that as well, so we can go into any kind of military or Department of Defense contractors or anyone that has the highest levels of compliance and regulatory requirements. It's not a problem. We do actually have the cloud as well. We have the FedRAMP cloud, which is the federally monitored cloud. So if there's a customer that can't go direct to a public cloud but needs a FedRAMP cloud, we have that capability. And then we do also have our clean room appliance. Again, this is a separate server with a separate disk storage. It's an isolated clean room to scan all of your backup data continuously. So it's not a single scan on ingest. It's on a rotation. It does have AI built into it. So if during a scan a certain virus gets detected, the AI will then prioritize scans for other likely infected areas. It also learns your data behavior to help cut down on anomalies and false positives. One thing we've seen that's been very big with our customers is that it provides validated recovery time and recovery point objective reports. So a lot of customers who have backups are supposed to prove that they can recover once or twice a year. 3 or 4 times a year is probably better. And very often they don't do it because their disaster recovery operations are very cumbersome and time consuming. Because this is running automatically in the background and scanning the full machine, it does spin the machine up in the isolated recovery room. So it can give you a verified recovery time and point objective for every server in your environment, as well as an environment-wide recovery time and objective. And we've seen our customers can take that to insurance auditors or compliance officers and not have to do any kind of internal heavy lifting. It becomes a very simple process for them to meet their objectives. And then one of the biggest advantages of Store Server is that we support the whole thing. So a lot of times you have a software, you have a hardware, you have all different kinds of vendors doing integration and everything like that. We manage the whole thing. We even do the cloud backend and make it very seamless. Our cloud, right now we use IBM Cloud, which is essentially the Red Hat cloud, which is also built off KVM. So I was talking earlier to the cloud guys, and although you guys haven't done any testing on the IBM Cloud, it's KVM based, so it should be very similar to what you have been doing with the Oracle stuff. So we shouldn't have any issues connecting into that. If you wanted to run that, we do have full appliance installations in the cloud as well. So you can run entirely SaaS-based solution if that was something that was interesting to you. And we do everything from cradle to grave, as they say. We size it, we spec it out, we provide the quote. It's a single quote with a bottom line number. We don't have to have uplifts and line items and all that kind of stuff built in there. Very easy for customers to read through. And again, we're up and running in steady state in days. Our support has over an 87% first call resolution, and that's because all of our support goes direct to the engineers, and all of our support and all of our builds are serialized on the same hardware with the same software. So it makes it very easy for us to troubleshoot. Typically, when something goes wrong, we figure it out, and we've beta tested it before it even goes live in our customer's environment. So, and when we do run into an issue, it's something that we can escalate quickly on our end, so that you guys get back, admins get back to work, and they don't have to spend their day waiting for or managing several different hardware and software vendors support tickets. That is it for me. Any questions on any of that? Then I will turn it over to Steve to talk about the interesting OpenVMS.
Which is the, oh, okay, it's obvious. Okay. I don't know, when I did this, of course, I wasn't real sure what the audience would look like. And I thought that, we have ported within Store Server quite a bit of stuff for a small company. And porting, I was going to have a big presentation on porting. So if you're falling asleep, just do this, and I'll move on to the next part. But I'll move through this fairly quickly. This is really intended to be just a conversation. This is what we noticed when we were doing porting, and the porting. That term is, well, what do you mean by it? What do you really mean when you say port? And it matters greatly the quality of your code base that you start with. If the code base is sloppy, the port is going to be, believe me, it's going to be very difficult. If the code base is clean, well engineered, and that sort of thing, the port is going to be, well, I'll cut to the chase. It's going to be easy. You're pretty much going to recompile things, and you're going to go find a couple of bugs in your own code, which is what happened to me. But I mean, it really goes pretty smooth. But we had three. There's actually more than this. We had. This is not in time order. It actually is. Let's see. Yeah, we actually started with number 2 in time base. That actually happens to be the TSM API. And when we received the API, that is an AIX code base. However, hats off to them. It is well designed. It was well written. I think we found, one handful worth of bugs from day 0, literally. 2 or 3 probably when we ported, and a couple later on. But that was it. The port for this was, not to x86 originally. It was originally VAX and Alpha. And literally, it was a matter of walking through the code, taking the operating specific pieces, adding to that VMS specific things, and compile, link, start testing. So it went real smoothly, even back in the 5.5 days. The biggest issues that we had to do with C runtime at the time, which did not behave like an AIX runtime. They were quite a bit different. So there were a few places where we had to mess around with that. The next one in time was the code base number 3. I got it back. They are in order. So the first one, the 133 modules, was the API. The next one down 60, that's actually ABC. And ABC's, that port is not really a port because ABC was written natively for VMS. We went to the lowest level we could go, so everything is QIO based, everything's block IO, that kind of thing internally. But the ports did happen. We ported, I guess the most interesting one would be the port to x86. And that took me personally, I think, I don't know, it's a couple of days, maybe 3. And then there was probably a week of, why is this not working? And it turned out to be exactly what you would imagine, and you've probably heard if you've listened to any of the other technical presentations. It turned out to be wrong sized variable. Stack, I think I have one stack uninitialized variable that, I don't know, magically got initialized by VAX and Alpha and Itanium, but not x86. And then the only other issue we had was really, we started with a very, very early version. We were not as early as SCI. I think they had the A kit. We had the B kit. So we got a little bit newer. And I did that mainly because I kind of lost track of what was happening with BSI, and I really wanted to see, okay, what does this actually look like? I wanted to kind of give back if I could find bugs and say I found this bug, then I'm kind of giving back in a way. So I felt like doing that. I was a little nervous about how new it was, and that was the only other stumbling block, because there were some issues with facilities or whatever that didn't work, hadn't been finished, and so those types of things are not something a customer today needs to see. So that was actually pretty simple. And then the large code base, that one's big. It's, as said, it's 1,100 modules. It's all in C, and it was in a dielectric sort of BSD, and it was smeared across a long time, so which meant that there were old facilities within it that were not well written. There were newer facilities, some of them well written, and that was a lift to get it to any VMS. And once we did get it there, the Portex 86 was not all that hard because we had gotten it to sort of a baseline in Itanium. So those are the things we've done. It has not been, I wouldn't call it hard work, but there has been some tricky things, especially on x86 where you get into variable sizes with uninitialized variables, those kinds of things. The reason is that the problem shows up over here. You know, you see it there and you go, what is going on? I couldn't have made that mistake. And you go back and you start looking in the wrong place. And I'm sure your engineers have had that same problem where they go, oh, it's over here. And you start looking at it and you keep going back and kind of peeling away the onion skin. And eventually you say, oh, and then you wonder, I know you did it because I did it. How did that ever work? So that was my experience with porting. Three different code bases. So let's see. Let's move on from that. I'm not even going to go through this because I think I did it verbally. I did. Nice.
So do you do any sort of compression at all before you send down?
Do I do any sort of what?
Compression. You compress, then you send it over to the TSM server.
Oh, that's optional.
You can do.
Yeah, you can. You, in general, don't want to.
Expending cycles.
It's gonna be slower in general. I mean, these days, most people have pretty good bandwidth on network, and that's not going to be your bottleneck. You're gonna spend cycles compressing for no reason. And bad news about compression is it messes up the deduplication. And you don't want to do that, right? Because you get much better result with the deduplication in the back end than you would if you compressed and sent it. Now it can't be duped, etc. These are some of the issues I ran into. I actually went through the yes, my code is still in CMS and MMS and all of that kind of stuff. And I ran into these things. I went through the CMS history and looked at what I fixed. And those were some of the things.
The size T one,
is that bit?
Yeah, when we were porting JK6, I think it was, Brett and I ported it.
Oh, did you? Okay.
And everywhere throughout that code, they're declaring things as size T and then jamming pointers into them.
Yep, that's exactly right. You know what I ended up doing? Shouldn't say this. I'm going to lose my coding license, but I looked at all the occurrences of size T. I considered a couple of things. I could just change them. Couldn't be that strange problem.
Yeah, that's going to be a point where they take a pointer to a size T.
and then you're screwed. Yeah.
And if the last value was negative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was, I don't know if there's any other real interesting ones. Oh, negative index balance check. That was an odd one. There is a CRC algorithm in the TSM API, which calculates a running CRC. And it has a very sophisticated, it doesn't do CRC like most people. It has sort of a nibble-based CRC mix when it runs. So it runs very quickly in all of that.
Some kind of
Well, what they did, I mean, I fixed it, but what they did is they had a couple of arrays. They had a U short with a tool. They have two sets of pointers to 16 short, something like that. And so they stack in memory like this. And the way the algorithm kind of unrolls is that you can end up in the wrong table, and they were using negative offsets. That was crossing a boundary between array, you know, element number 1, 0, and element number 1, right? So you see the problem. And that works on alpha containing facts. It does not work on x86.
Where's John meaning? I bet it worked by accident.
Oh, I'm sure it worked by accident. No doubt. It's when I looked at the code, I thought this is wrong.
Yeah.
And that's what we did.
This is one of those, how did it ever work?
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened.
This must be something that Gem was okay with, and LLVM is clearly not.
Yeah, I think it is. Isn't that what the vast majority of the issues really are? It comes down to that.
Gem is way too smart for something good. That's my opinion.
Well, it depends. I have to see the example because I like code to be I like it to be clean, and I don't accept code that isn't clean. So if it's wrong, it's wrong. Nothing there of interest, I don't think. I was going to walk through what I found to be a useful workflow component. That is, and it's kind of an obvious thing if you've ever ported anything. The first thing you need to do is build it, and it has to build reliably. And it's real important that you can cycle through quick, so you can make a change, you can update it, it's back, and it's reliable, and you believe in it. So I always do that first before anything to make that work. These days, with the open source, the libraries are much nicer than they used to. They come with test programs and stuff like that, which is really fantastic. The TSM API did not come with a test program. That would, how do I want to say this? It wasn't a module unit test. There was no unit tests. There were basically large scale integration tests. It's the whole thing wrong. And so we went back as part of that and wrote individual tests. I like the tests out of the modules. It's a time-consuming process, but it makes things work in the end. Time convert. Oh, that's not all that interesting. TSM has its own time format, and it's not VMS, and it's not Linux. So who knew? Well, I already told you. Yeah, good. I'm not. Sorry. I guess go through the thing.
So did you do anything to improve the performance of APIs?
Not so much the API. Where we ran into, in fact, in both of the very large code base and also in the TSM API, where we ran into performance issues were basically block IO not being used correctly in the ad, or at least not used in a way that VMS likes. And we like to do, I like to do double buffering for performance reasons, and they never did anything like that. So we did add some of that. Yeah. But it wasn't really in the API. The TSM API, that's very clean, and that's going to lead me to this next piece. It's a super clean API. One of the nice things about it is it abstracts what you want to do with that. I mean, they thought about it, did a good job on it. And that led me to, when we started talking about, that led me to a customer story. I have to tell you a short customer story. A very, very good customer who has been with us a lot. Yeah, more than 10, 15 years, something like that. They have been doing production backup of all their production systems to TSM for that time. And they came to us one day and said, "Well, I'm sorry, Slow Server, we're not going to go over this." I said, "Well, why not?" Well, the large division has come down and told the small division that the small division has to move to. And we went, oh, Jeff and I looked at each other, we don't want to lose these guys. So
So I say, Steve, how easy is it to get this whole thing reprogrammed for Rubrik real quick?
and so I said, I either lose this customer and maybe a lot of others like them, or I figure it out, right? Rubrik is probably the premier backup, enterprise backup software. No, it's from Rubrik. Yeah, this is a completely different company.
It's pretty cloud-based, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, it's cloud native, yeah, sure. And Windows and Linux typically. But our guys were gonna try to figure out a way to do that, our customer. And I didn't know it was a customer, let's just be honest. So I thought, okay, how would I do that? And I got to realize that ABC really looks like this. And I added in the TSM part, which is kind of at the bottom. It has a CLI, and yeah, it's a command line. It looks a lot like OpenVMS backup. It backs up. It has source and target locations out here for backup, source, target for restore, and then the data. Oh, is it on? I think the middle. Oh, that's not it. Ah, nice. Basically, there's these two operations. One is it's what it says. It's query and control of the server. And what does that mean? Well, that means that I have a database out there, which I know nothing about, but I can call that database, find out, okay, what files do you have? What disks are those files associated with? But yada. There's actually quite a bit of metadata stored into the catalog. The beauty of that is there's a term I'm going to use after a little bit, as soon as I can again. That makes ABC states. It has no state. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means if I bomb my VMS machine and it's gone, and I go by, put new stuff up, I can still restore that same data, right? Because it states it doesn't need to know anything about what was there before, because it's all somewhere else, right? We just stored it somewhere else. So that makes ABC stateless, and I thought that is a real problem. I need all this data over in the server side to work, and I set that. And it came to me that is not a problem. It's actually a feature. It's a feature because if I've got all that state elsewhere, I don't have to worry about it on the VMS. So I don't need a ginormous VMS database of some kind. Maybe I spin my own up. Maybe I port some database software, or maybe I use one of the ports that Brett has done, something like that. But now I've got this thing, now I've got the database, that's backup, at least I have to that's the same server, the other stuff is. And it just problem is like this. So I came away with that. Okay, I'm okay. Everything's fine. So these are the functional steps. What's in the database? And then I've got to be able to get data to from. So there's some sort of path. I did two things at once. Great. I've moved on to the next slide. I don't know, this was drawn by somebody else. Okay, it's a back-end agnostic target. Yeah, it's just abstract, right? We know there's a query, we know there's a data path. That's the abstraction. It's not that big. What happens if I take the TSM API out of this product that we've had since? Right? What happens? Well, the first thing I did was I made TSM API local. So if fire up ABC, just put it in and we started looking to see what happened. And yeah, there was a lot of things that I looked at and thought, gee, I don't know. Started looking into Rubrik because that was the direction of customers. So they have a very large GraphQL API. It's both deep, right? Very sophisticated. And there are control functions in there. Turns out there are control functions I needed. Thank goodness. And the only issue was the data transfer. How are we going to do that? Well, Rubrik exports a NFS share of NFS. Everybody rolls their eyes. NFS. I've heard about NFS and know that. The thing about NFS is NFS is perfectly happy to deal with binary files. It doesn't care. So what we need in those binary files is the that used to be TSM. What do we lose when we do that? Because now there's a two-step process, right? TSM, it's an RPC query, it's fast, we get data back right now. This, to get all the details, I'm going to have to mount this share. Then I'm going to have to go read it. Then I can. And that bothered me for a long time. And I realized, do you really need all that information? Let me explain what that information was. There's two fairly large pieces of metadata that stood out in the case of database. One is, I call it distance. It describes the list that has anything you need to know about that list that you might want to need, that you need if you were interested. How do I initialize it? Or how big was it? All of those kinds of things are stored there. So ABC, unlike OpenVMS backup, that's one of the differences. We've noticed right away. You don't have to specify the output. By default, the output is where the data lives, because no, we have that's part of it. That's part and parcel of that data. So that's one fairly large piece of data structure. The other one is for each file, we have, and this is part of the metadata. We have all of the file header information that you would expect, but we also have ACLs, full copies of all the ACLs, and all that kind of thing. That allows us to do some pretty neat things, like privilege checks that are restored without actually restoring them, stuff like that. So that's helpful. Makes the file secure and working. Rubrik is a different animal. Rubrik in TSM, I mentioned it's all incremental forever. The way that works, just kind of imagine it. So I back up 1, 2, 3, file 1, 2, 3. And the next day I back up. So in TSM, there's databases. So sophisticated databases, EBT actually. And those, you basically just have pointers for initiating files. The other piece is what I delete off of the process. Well, in that case, you just note that with databases, basically. And so then you can have a slider, you can have something like a date slider. Say, what did that disk look like on July 3rd this year? Just make a query and the data comes back. The files that you need come back, and the files that weren't there yet go back. That. So it's a manipulation of a set of databases. So that's what it is. Rubrik is totally different. In Rubrik, you get a disk. It's always a snapshot. It's always live. It's always whatever's the latest. So your time sequence is your snapshots. So if you're doing them every day, then that's your time sequence. There's some nice queries in Rubrik that will give you, that makes the programmer's job a little bit. Say, give me the closest thing to this thing. I don't care if it's moving over the closest thing. It will do that for you. You get it back for free out of the a couple of pieces on the Rubrik API, GraphQL. You need, thankfully, Brett took care of the curl for us. I didn't want to have to But that, I don't know how hard it was, but it would have been more time, and I agree with that. Then you have to do some JSON work, and we did that. I don't think you guys have that. It's not that much, so I don't think you have JSON. You might. I haven't.
I don't know.
I'll bet.
We might.
So I guess to close that whole random thought, it occurred to me that the snapshot is they're one of the same. There's no difference. The end result is the same as a query through TSM would have been, like the same set of files. It's just now snapshot. Now there were and still are some issues with NFS or complicated. I really wish
We had NFS4.
Not really. I don't care. From a security standpoint, it would give us all the but no, I just want to block just binary data. That's all. Everything is coded within CDOs. So essentially, we have files that they're self-describing. So they have the header, they have the ACL, they have all of that in the snapshot pocket. And then when we go to the store, we unpack all, put back the original file with the original owners, share the file header information, original ACLs. So that's kind of really high level how it works. There's a lot of, there's difficulty. Part of the difficulty is encoding, just that. Encoding, if you have an ODS 5, just, that's, I think, what there are 2 invalid characters out of 16 bits. Question mark stuff. So anything else is possible. RMS does a fine job of turning it into something that displays on your screen, none of which we care about in this app. So that's a lot. And what would be very useful is if we just stored it. Because that can code, and if you're going to code, the ASCII, all of that stuff. And I tried, the way I tried, this is in the weeds, so I apologize in advance. The way I tried it was writing, say, UCSA to by a QI to the file, basically naming it that way raw. I was kind of ignoring RMS. And that did not work. It almost worked. Actually, what's interesting is it works on disk. It's fine. Use an undisk. Somewhere in there, there's a distance. I threw up my hands and I gave up. I ended up was coming up with a codec, which is just a table-driven translator. So in this part where we're dealing with what is the catalog, in that part, everything sent to NFS client is sent to there's no RMS escape. There's none of the carrot stuff. That all gets changed before it's shipped out. Most of the time, that doesn't matter to anybody because if you look at it through the external interface, the files are either the same as you're used to, or they're so close you won't they are. And then if you use APC, of course, it has the reverse codec, so it comes back and it's just like the file. Those were really the tough pieces for me. Do a lot of trial and error and diligence. So the Rubrik version of this, from literally the second level up with ABC, is exactly the same as the assembly. All of the file IO is the same, all of that stuff, all of the overall operations, backup, store, those are all the same. It's just down in the low level. On the one side, it's the TCP. It's a separate piece. It's a separate image, sure. And on the other side, it's a layer is a set of 10 or 11 modules that play root and they know how to deal with the graph API, and they have they're fairly sophisticated modules. So that's how it works. So the big question I have now that we have, Rubrik's done TSM we've done for 30 years. It works. It's solid.
What's the next one?
What's the next one do you want to see?
Well, I was just thinking about this. There was a push in our company to scale down, right?
Mhm.
It just didn't, yeah. Couldn't get it to work right. Is there a future back end be network or server?
Not with
Is it the legato stuff?
that's the old
Yeah.
Legato stuff.
So, like that's what we did. Our company is standardized on, you know, I guess for the exceptions.
The answer to that question, I mean, I do know what the answer is. The answer is that
Illegal.
well, I've got it. I'm telling you the answer. The answer is you just have to get dealt. If they provided software that isn't meeting your needs, it means
Yeah, we did. I mean, we could never get it.
Dell performance specification.
It just didn't scale.
it's not the same. No, we can't use that. They don't have an API.
Okay,
And
well, that's,
so I
sucks.
It does suck. IBM has, I mean, I love that. I love Teams. It's really, really well designed. It's just full of. The API is no different. It's full of. And it's great. But as far as open APIs for data movement, actually moving data, those are rare. Not really. Rubrik has the API I was talking about, the GraphQL API. There's no data. I sort of, I made this a little simple, but we had to split things, right? We've got the data movement stuff, which is totally different than the TSM product because we're doing local data movement, this to this, sort of. And on TSM, we're actually ADC is communicating with RPC, with standard RPC. So that's a middle ground. If backup vendor can get you to that middle ground, then I can make ADC work. But with something like that, there's no say or recover. So that's the answer. You have to go
Well,
back.
and they're not interested in doing anything.
Go back to
with
Dell.
VMS. They're just not, you know, big enough.
There's a lot of that. We've run into that. It's hard to convince, a company that's capitalized at $4 billion that this is where you need to spend your money.
Well, we're not asking them to spend all $4 billion.
No, that's true, right? And actually, it's a pretty low number. It's not high, but then you have to do something. There is there is the business of managing releases and all of that.
We're using Dell EMC storage.
Okay, so
We have issues. It's their new release of PowerMax. So, they went to version 10. There's an API that provided us to operate the VMS side. It's called Solutions Enable.
okay,
That was
and they didn't help you with it.
no. This is not. We were told you're going to go 2% of our customers. So we went through an elaborate setup.
Well, this is Daria's early comment this morning. This is exactly the reason why smaller companies is sometimes much better, much more use because we're going to pay attention. And our customer, the reason this is here was just the customer came and said, we're really sorry. We love using this product. And, I think of whatever. That's a shame. To us, it's food off the table, literally. We can't do that. And less so for you, but that was your point. I thought that was great.
And, one of the nice things about that is it's happened now. Under the integrity. So you're all set with x86 when we go through and it's the same story. Take a little bit of thinking. Design solution, keep base, that's the thing. To super commands over to stuff. Yeah.
Are there any questions about ABC or the porting stuff?
Show your last slides.
Do I have a slide?
Yeah, you do.
I don't think it's gonna work.
It'll work.
Just already done the questions.
Oh, look, there's a DCL command line.
Oh, sis.
Sosis, no proc. B921. ADC show session. Notice the Rubrik cluster here. Swap server. Same command exactly. This is the TSM. And this gives you a little bit of an idea of the type of extra metadata that we have in a catalog, because it's a real database. Whereas with Rubrik, there is no, for what it's worth, there's no write capabilities in the API. You can't store. I looked and I tried and I begged and so forth. You can't store anything there. You can't store anything in their database. It's not like everything is. So that's an example of it. But this is an important point. When we gave ADC to our customer who was running Aegis, we're a small company, and we did everything we could, but we provided very little guidance. We had a kind of a kickoff meeting on Zoom. I said, why don't you just install it? You've been using Aegis years. Why don't you just use this? Okay, so off they went, and they had a couple of startup issues. One was I forgot to make sure that Perl was started. So the first thing that happened was there was a failure finding the certs. Startup. That was. I thought, and I looked at that and said, I've never seen this. Because of course I started up the software, and so there was a research project. Where is this coming from? But we got them up. We got them past that in fairly short order, and then they started using the software, and they used the same commands. They're not different. They're the same. Store is the same. Package is the same. Acting is.
So the customer stayed.
Yeah. Well, we've got them in beta. They're quite happy with the implementation. We tried to get them to come out with this to this bootcamp. They're not quite to the point where they're ready. But we're really hoping to be the next bootcamp or something. I'd like to. They're really great people. They're really great.
There you go.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nice.
Thank you.